saluting him, doing all works for his sake, being his friend, surrendering oneself. These are the 9 forms of devotion. If one practices these, it would be, I feel, the highest education. So we took a brief look at the first 6 of these. So now we'll see numbers 7, 8, and 9. The number 7 is called dasyam, and which literally means doing all work. Dasya really means being a servant of God, and we really mean doing all work for God's sake. Now, work is clearly all that we have to do, every one of us. And by work, clearly, and as some of us were saying yesterday, sometime when you ask people, what do you do? Essentially, we're just asking like what job they are holding or what do they do to earn their livelihood. But when we use the word work, it has a much broader scope. It's not just about the job that we do. Every activity of the both body and mind is technically work. And since from the time we were born, really, we have been doing work. Even a movement of hands and limbs, that's really activity. Um, and so no matter what may be our primary path in spiritual life, work is inevitably connected with it. Whether one is a bhakta or a jnani or a rajyogi, no matter what, everyone is be doing something or the other, sometime or the other, somewhere or the other. And so the question becomes, how should I work? Because oftentimes work we see is inevitable. So we really don't have a choice between working and not working. We just have a choice between what work should I do and how I should do it. And sometimes we may not even have much choice about what work to do. Not every one of us has the privilege to choose what we want to do. Sometimes we are put in a lane, we just have to just do it. Sometimes it's like being in a lane, there is so much traffic, you can't even change the lane. You're just stuck there. And if there is some construction work or an accident, then you are just stuck there. You can't move at all. Sometimes life might feel like that the lot of things we would like to do, we just kind of stuck in a lane. We just can't move. And so then the question becomes, the second thing we see about work is usually the more we work, the more stress we have, the more tired we get. And sometimes we might think that's just the way, that's the nature of work. Is there a work, the way of doing work by which we will not get stressed, by which we will maybe get a little bit less tired than we normally do? The work also has a tendency to get us so involved into it that sometimes people feel that they lose a little bit of their personal freedom because of work. Which is why, why this whole concept of TGIF came in one way. Why why do we even have to say, why are we so happy when a Friday comes? Because somehow there is this illusion that on a weekend is a time I can do what I want. But which also makes us feel like, what about the rest of the 5 days? That's the day I really can't do everything that I want. But the remaining 5 days are as much a part of my life as the weekend. So that means majority of my life, most of my life, I can't do what I want. So I have to be just looking forward to this weekend. It's not as if we do any less work on weekends. Sometimes people do more work on weekends than on weekdays. But many people find weekends relaxing, partly because they feel I'm doing this work not because my boss has asked me to do it or I'm being pressured into doing it. I do it because I love doing it. And so if we see that it's possible to work on weekends, do what we like, indulge in our hobbies. And although that might require a lot more activity, we feel a little bit more relaxed. We enjoy doing it. Now, somehow, can we bring that mentality when we are working from Monday to Friday as well? Because somehow, if I can find a way to enjoy my work even during weekdays, if I can enjoy the work when instead of it being a stress producing stuff can be somehow liberating, then in a way, every day can be a weekend. Every day can be, then we don't have to. We don't have to celebrate only when Friday comes. We can celebrate every day of this. And that's the idea behind Karma Yoga in some way. Um, in the Gita, second chapter, Krishna says, Yogav karmasu kaushalam, that your karma, every one of us has to do. But if we can do it in a kushalata, sometimes they translate the dexterity in action, but kind of a simple way would be, can we do it in a smart way? Nowadays, even phones are becoming smart. So I think our way of doing work should be smarter than it has been. And a smart way of doing work would be to work is like a key. We know oftentimes nowadays, of course, there are keyless locks, but if you use, still we are old fashioned and still use the key to open a lock, then we know that the same key can lock as well as unlock. It just depends on which way we turn it. Work is like that. You do one way of doing work increases tension, anxiety, stress. A different way of doing work, it just produces the opposite effect. It makes more free and stress-free and so on. So the wrong way of doing work, then that's what workaholics do. They do a lot of work, but they get tired, they get exhausted, they get stressed out. And so then it's no more a yoga. In fact, there is the word roga, it's a disease. So karma, it will become karma roga. So sometimes we might hear the word karma yoga is often kind of used rather loosely. I mean, I've seen that often in India when someone passes away, some person holding a public office or some leader or some community leader or something. And then at their memorial, people say, oh, yeah, it was a very great karma yogi. Now, I mean, what they're really meaning is that person really may have done a lot of good work. But just somebody does a lot of good work doesn't make it a karma yoga, doesn't make it a yogi. So workaholics are not karma yogis. If we work because we cannot stop working, it's become more like a disease to us. And so karma roga, so the turning the clock, the lock in one way, the key in one way, that would be karma as a disease. But you just turn the opposite way, then it becomes a yoga. And that's what Krishna says, yoga of karmasu kaushalam. So what is that other way of doing yoga? And that's really what karma yoga, there are two ways of doing it, at least. And Swamiji refers to them. One way is for those, Swamiji says, is for those who, clearly, if one is practicing yoga, then it's assumed that you have faith in God. But we have seen yesterday and day before yesterday that it's possible to look upon the divine either in an impersonal way or a personal way. So if one tends to think of the divine, look at the divine as in an impersonal way, God is an infinite reality, then for such people, the way of doing karma yoga is what Swamiji calls work for work's sake. In the Gita, probably in the 18th chapter, Krishna says, Karyam ityeva yat karma. That is, do work. So the motivation, what does work for work's sake mean? That there is another one Sanskrit saying which says that Prayojanam anuddishya na mandopi pravartate, which means that even a fool doesn't do anything without a motive. So everything that we do, there is some motive or the other. The question is, what motive would be good for me to have? What motive would make it a yoga? Now, for someone who has an impersonal ideal, the only motive would be, I am going to do what is good, I'm going to do what is right, and the only motive is, I'm going to do what is good because it is good. Not in order to get appreciation or recognition or gratitude of anyone, not in order to, oh, it will take me to heaven, or any of those things or motives are possible. That's why a lot of people do work. But those motivations will not make it a yoga. If it is a yoga, and if I have an impersonal ideal, my motive should be, this is a good thing to do. That's the only motivation I have, that I will do what is good. Or I'm doing this because it is the right thing to do. And what the texts say is that if we do it with that motive, it'll purifies the heart. That's called chitta shuddhi. And then the teaching from the Sermon on the Mount, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Swamiji says in one place, if all the scriptures of the world were destroyed in some way, and if only this one teaching remained, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God, this can regenerate the entire spirituality. That was how profound this teaching is. So this chitta shuddhi, this purity of heart, is enough for us to then see God. So that is how those with an impersonal ideal can do. Those with a personal ideal, those who see God in more personal terms, to them it might seem, at least to them, that that would be an easier way to go forward. And in Sanskrit, they call it Ishvara Arpana Buddhya Yat Karma Kriyate, that one who does every work as an offering to the divine. So just like in a ritualistic worship, we offer flowers, we offer incense, we offer a lot of things. The same way, the work that we do is also offered at the feet of God. And so therefore, a devotee of Krishna or a devotee of Ramakrishna would say, everything that I do, I'm doing it out of love to, and then you can fill in the blank with your own ishta, that I'm doing it out of love for them. And we know that when there is love in the heart, and when someone who loves us asks us to do something, then doing that is such a joy. It doesn't become a chore. We love it because we know that that's the way the one I love will be happy. And if I love God, and now the question would be, sure, doing puja and doing japa, etc., and make an offering to God, that kind of, well, that's a spiritual activities. But how can I, if I'm working if I'm a software engineer, or if I'm a lawyer or a doctor or whatever other job I'm holding, how can I make that offering? It's pretty just secular work. So one of the things that we see is that in the beginning, we usually have these, as long as this distinction remains in the heart. This is secular, this is spiritual. Until then, there is this other division becomes, and this is my work and this is my worship. So this is my secular duties and responsibilities, and this is whatever we do with, which are kind of ostensibly, clearly, obviously religious things. Study of texts and puja and worship and prayer. So that's my religious part of me. And this is the secular part of me. Now, that most of us kind of begin thinking of life in those terms. So what it does do, therefore, is create this kind of a distinction that all the secular thing that I do is the work, and everything in general you could say is worship, for instance. So it's work and worship. And sometimes, so long as the two remain distinct, it is going to set up some conflict, because then there are these two things I need to attend to. And we know that all of us have some fixed amount of time and energy at our disposal. And so then the question becomes, how much time should I give for this? How much time should I give for that? How much energy I should allot for this? How much energy I should allot for that? And that can sometimes set up dilemmas, conflicts. Sometimes one might find that, well, I'm doing too much or too little, or I should divert some of my resources to the other thing. All these kind of dichotomies appear. So the one thing we are often told is, the one way is to try to do all work as worship. And doing work as worship would mean making an offering of it to the divine. Now, as I said, if this dichotomy exists, then how can I connect my purely secular work and activities with the divine? And one way of thinking that would be, no matter whatever nature of my secular work might be, which is, first of all, taking it for granted, assuming that the work we are doing is ethical and moral, clearly, unethical activities can't be offered to the divine. Just like when you offer flowers or sweets, you want to offer the best flowers. You want to offer the not like some rotten fruits to the divine. And therefore, when we are offering any activity, the work has to be according to dharma, according to it's ethical. So even if it's what we see as secular, so long as it is not breaking any laws, both moral laws and even the laws of the place where we live in, we can see that no matter what work we do, we have to use some of our skills, some of our knowledge, some talents that we have, things we may have worked hard for. Every work we need to use some of our time and energy. Now, what a bhakta says is that all of these have come to me through God's grace. Even my knowledge, skill, and talents, I may have worked for it, but even that desire to work for it, the energy to work for it came to me through God's grace. And so whatever work I'm doing, I'm using all the resources that came to me from God. And because I love God, I'm going to use these resources as best I can. So that's how even secular work can be associated with the divine, recognizing it as I'm using the gifts I've received from God in as good a way as I can. And we know that those who are teachers know that whatever you share with your students, and if your students make good use of what they learn, that is the greatest gift to a teacher. The teacher says, nothing makes me more happy than to see that my students are using the knowledge and skills in the best possible way. So when we use the talents and skills that we have in the best possible way and make it as an offering to God, that's the best gift we can give to God. It's not enough to just go and make some big donations and give all these gifts and then just do whatever we want. God doesn't, what can we give to God what is not already God's? Like in Bengali, there is a saying, Ganga Jale, Ganga Puja. Because among the different and there are hundreds of different special days and pujas that Hindus do. And among them is one puja called Ganga Puja, because the Ganges is considered so sacred. So one day in a year in the calendar is dedicated to worshipping the Ganges. Now, oftentimes in many ritualistic worship, they use Ganges water because it's sacred water. So now when you're worshipping the Ganges, what water will you use? Well, you have to use Ganges water to worship the Ganges. So oftentimes, if you have never seen that puja, if you just go to Belur Math website and they have sometimes videos of how the Ganga puja is done at Belur Math. It's wonderful. It's right on the edge of the water. Ganges. They set up the puja items and everything. And they don't need to then even keep water because plenty of water available right there. So you just take the water from there and then again do all the rituals with that same water. In the same way, whatever offerings we make to the divine, and God must be just kind of just smiling. It's like, okay. But sometimes like children want to give birthday gift to their parents. I mean, sometimes with children, from where are they going to get money? So they take money from their parents, get them a gift and say, this is my gift to you. And the parents, they feel happy, but they know, well, it's already mine, right? Yeah. So that's what I would imagine God feels when we kind of make an offering to God. But still, it's not what you give, but how you give it. There is a saying, Bhavagrahi Janardana, that God looks at the heart of the devotee, not what you are bringing. So even whatever we bring, if it comes from the heart, that is what is appreciated. So at the end of the day, we have to just say, a bhakta will say that whatever I have done today, none of that would have been possible unless it was the will of God. So I make all of that, offer it at the feet of God. So if you want to get good sleep at night, don't carry any baggage with you. Offer everything. If you don't hold anything back, because what bothers us, what delays our sleep is the things that we just carry in the heart and they won't allow us to sleep. If I'm able to offer everything at the feet of God, and like a little baby, I can just sleep peacefully. So that is dasyam, doing all work for God's sake. The next, number 8, is called sakhyam, friendship with God. Because I think Voltaire, who said that God gave me my family. Thank God I can choose my friends. Because sometimes we don't really have a choice about our family. When we were born, we don't remember ever anybody giving us a choice like, would you be like to be born here or born there? We don't know. We're just suddenly born now. So there are some people around us, they're just by default, they are with us. But at least we do have some choice about what friends we can make in life. So, and sometimes friends, it can be a much closer relation than even the relatives that we might have. In fact, clearly, like everything in life, friends also, there are levels of friendship. Some are just kind of casual acquaintances. Some may be a little bit closer. And then maybe at least one or two, maybe like really close friends. And those who have such really close friends understand the value of friendship. It's good to have at least one or two friends or very close. So close that they will not hesitate to tell us what we don't like to hear. Because sometimes casual friendship, we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. And so even if we see they're doing something stupid, we don't go and tell them, hey, this is stupid. Because that person will get upset. Why should I want to hurt someone? We don't do that. But it's a really close friend, wouldn't mind coming and telling you, you're just stupid. And sometimes we need to hear that. But those who don't have those close friends kind of miss a great opportunity. And here is a kind of a general piece of advice, which most of us kind of figure it out sooner or later in our own way, is that if someone corrects us for anything, don't get upset. Don't become indignant. Even if you know you're right, or even if you feel, because sometimes people don't like being corrected. Their ego kind of comes in, who are you to tell me that? Or even if what the other person is saying is correct, it's good for me, the person it just hurts someone to say that, oh, you think I'm wrong? You think you are right? People fight all the time. And I mean, there are essentially two things. If someone comes and corrects me, either that correction is valid or it's not valid. If it's not valid, if you know that what you're doing is right and that person is correcting you for no reason, okay, there's no need to get upset about it. You know you're right. You don't need to change anything. On the other hand, if the person corrects you and you find you're doing something wrong, and then you should be grateful that that person corrected you. But in either case, there is no scope to become indignant. And why I say that is because if we develop a reputation that every time somebody tells you something, you get upset or angry, then slowly people will stop correcting you. And then what mistakes we have will remain with us because everybody will just laugh at our back and think, oh, what a stupid person. But nobody will come and tell us because we tend to get upset about it. Now, when we are very young, usually elders in the family, there are parents and other elders who will say, hey, don't do this, don't do that. There will be people to correct us. Or then you start going to school, sometimes teachers might tell us that. But as we get older in our own lives, the people who are going to correct us become fewer and fewer because those who used to correct us have become even old. Some of them will pass away, some of them will go away. So, and most of us who are now getting older by year after year, everybody does that. So we find that the people to correct us become less and less and less. And when that happens, if we have not been careful up to that point to receive the suggestions and corrections from people around us, after a certain time, those mistakes will just remain with us. There's nobody to correct us. Even if some younger people see the mistakes around us, they'll be afraid, oh, this person is so old and I can't go. It's out of respect or out of fear, they won't correct you. And so who is the loser? I am the loser because then there is no way for me to correct myself unless I'm able to discover my mistake. Could I have some water, please? Unless I'm able to discover the, oh, thank you. And therefore, it's always good to recognize, to be grateful for all the corrections. And that's why I said about friendship. A close friend will do that for us. God can be that closest friend of ours. Sometimes, of course, you have read in the New Testament, knock and it shall be opened and all of that. And normally we tend to think of that kind of a teaching, which comes in many different forms in different traditions, is that we have to do the knocking and then keep on knocking and pray and then God will open the door. That's one way to think about it. But there's another way to think about it. And that is the knocking is really done by God. In fact, God has been knocking at our door from the moment we are born. And it's we who are not opening the door. Because the nature is trying to teach us every moment. If you're willing to learn, that's what when Sri Ramakrishna says, as long as I live, so long do I learn. If our education doesn't end when we graduate or when we finish school, because sometimes people think, oh, I'm no longer a student. But in some sense, we have to continue to be students of life all throughout our life. So our student days can never be over. And if we are willing to learn, then everything in life can teach us. We look out of the window, look at a tree. A tree is trying to teach us something. Look at the sky. The sky is trying to teach me something. And that way, therefore, all the knocking is really done by the divine in so many different forms around me. And if I refuse to learn, I'm the one who is not opening the door. And so it's possible to recognize that, and God can become our closest friend. And we are not afraid of our friends because there is the phrase God-fearing soul, which is often used in very positive way. But there is also something, it's not, to my mind, it just seems as if it's not the best thing we can do. I mean, it's good to be, if we at least be God-fearing, but then the question is like, why should I fear God? Because if I love God, then love and fear can never go together. Yes, respect, yes, but not fear. So, to the extent, and I think partly this could be also the way God is presented to us. God is a big tyrant sitting on a judgment, ready to cast me into infinite hell forever. Then, of course, it'll be terrifying to go before a God like that. But if we, and I mean, the image of Kali is a very interesting image in some ways because it is terrifying, depending on which um, the iconography of Kali. Where do you look at the sword and look at the blood and look at all these, the garland of human heads? Not a very soothing, calming picture. And so people get terrified sometimes. In fact, in in southern India and many parts of India, I mean, usually they'll have a Kali temple somewhere at the outskirts of a village, and people are terrified to go there. And Swami Vivekananda once says, or maybe there is a song, I don't remember where I read it, that it's we who put on this garland of skulls around Kali. It's we who put this big sword in our hand, and then we're like, oh, this is terrifying. But it's you who did it. And so, of course, there is the other hand of Kali, which is blessing. And so it's kind of interesting to see when we look at the picture or image of Kali, where is our attention drawn to? Because looking at that same image, the same thing, where Sri Ramakrishna saw was a very loving, blissful, kind mother, a compassionate mother. And it's the same image that some people like terrified. Oh, so it's interesting. So so much depends on how, and we were speaking earlier today about how some of these ideas go deep inside, that you're afraid of the dark or ghost, then it's kind of very difficult to get that idea out of your head. So similarly, if at very young age we are like told about the God, the tyrant, and God might do this to you, and then that can be a big hurdle then to see God as a loving presence in our lives. And so clearly there is nothing much we can do about if we want certain things in our childhood to have been changed. Too late now. But at least the new generation that is coming up, maybe in your family or among your friends' families, we can be now do a little better job. That like we would like to present ideas to this younger generation the way we hope or wish it had been done to us. We cannot keep on perpetuating just because we were told something in one way. We are just going to like, oh, we suffered, so these fellows also will have to suffer. And it doesn't help. Um, like sometimes some of these very stereotypical stories in India, it's about how they say how every mother-in-law was once a daughter-in-law. And so every mother-in-law said, well, I suffered so much when I went married. Now I'm going to teach the same lesson to my daughter-in-law. So God can be a very close friend. And that relationship between God as a deep friend, we find exemplified in the relationship between Arjuna and Krishna. I mean, although they were cousins, they were more like very close friends. Um, and of course, the relationship between gopis and gopas with Krishna. Uh, the next one and the last one of these 9 forms of devotion is called Atmanivedanam, complete self-surrender. There is a story from a Sufi tradition, I think, which Swamiji refers to in his the retreat he gave at Thousand Island Park in upstate New York. So he said there is this one person who is waiting for his beloved to come, and he hears a knock at the door, and so he says, "Who is it?" Um, and then, of course, the voice says, "It's me," and he doesn't open the door. And once again, there is a knock, and he said, "Who is there?" He said, "It's me." Doesn't open the door. And every time he asks, "Who is there?" and he said, "It's me," he doesn't open the door. Finally, when he asks, "Who is there?" and the answer is, "It's you, my beloved," and then the door is opened. What it means is that love, true love, is a movement from the I to the beloved. It's a movement away from the ego. So it's not about me, it's about you. So when we like to think that I love God, I love Thakur, I love Mother, whichever way we see that, we have to kind of ask ourselves, why is it that I want to be a bhakta, or why is it that I love God? And sometimes the answer might come, well, God is everything, God can give me what I want, and I pray to God, God give me moksha, I want to be enlightened, which is fine, it's not a bad thing to pray for. But still, in a very subtle way, if all that I want from God is my enlightenment or my moksha, it really is God has become the means. The goal is to become enlightened. The goal is moksha. And then God is like, I love God because God can give me moksha. But the highest form of bhakti is a bhakta wants God, loves God because God is God, nothing else. Not even moksha, not even enlightenment. And moksha will come, of course. But that's the last thing a bhakta is looking for. And that's what love is. Love is just giving of oneself fully without expecting anything in return. Therefore, bhakta doesn't even look for freedom or moksha or enlightenment. Bhakta says, I just love you, God. And so we began by saying that prayer is a form of asking. And that's true. But it's possible that our love for God can become so, so intense. It can reach such a height that the thought of asking completely goes away. Because you're like asking for me, but if my I is gone, if my ego is gone, if my ego is completely surrendered to God, then who am I asking for? There is no I to ask for. In fact, in one of the prayers of an Alvar, is a South Indian Vaishnava saints, it's kind of it's a prayer that doesn't feel like a prayer. So this great saint, he bent down in prayer and started praying. But because the I was completely given, the prayer took a very unusual form. The What this bhakta says is, Lord, may you live long, may you have no difficulties in life, may I all know, and so on, just like the kind of a thing a mother would want for her baby. And now, as I said, this is a prayer, but that's what the bhakta wanted to do. But even the thought of asking anything for himself didn't cross the bhakta's mind. That's what is called the para-bhakti, the highest form of bhakti. When God is no longer the means to an end, God becomes the end itself. Now, some of us who have been told about moksha is the goal, we have to be free, Mm, so it's kind of an interesting idea that there is a stage even higher than that. Because even wanting moksha is still, there is a still very subtle form of I involved there. I want to be free. And so that when the heart is completely filled with love, that I completely goes away. And so that is Atmanivedanam. That's a total surrender. And it's kind of good to see in our own personal lives, even though we may not be kind of very obviously egoistic people, but in a very subtle way, this I does come up. Mm, in fact, there is that one often quoted section from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which says that everything in life becomes dear to us or something becomes meaningful to us only when it is connected to the self in some way. Atmanastu kamaya sarvam priyam bhavati. And even think about it this way. People become fans, they have some like some sports icons or movie stars or some celebrities. People become fans of them. So, or now this Olympics, some great achievement that those at Olympic, all the medals they got. So what is this psychology behind being fans of some people who are able to do some extraordinary things in life? And one way of understanding that is that there is a desire in us to, at some level, if we are able to appreciate something and want to achieve that for ourselves. And maybe we kind of realize, I don't have the skill for it, or I don't have the talent for it. But I want to achieve that. So I then focus all my love and adoration on some person who is able to achieve that in the field in which I would love to if I could. But since I cannot, I just adore this person who does that. So it's almost like, just like there is vicarious atonement, it's like a vicarious achievement that I would like to be the marathon runner and be the first. I can't do it. I'm not trained for it. I don't have the skill for it. So then I become a fan of this person who is able to run and become first. And so through that, because I've identified myself with that person now, that person's achievement in some form become my achievement. And I'm able to get that joy vicariously through that person. And sometime you will see that someone, a figure of my adoration, if that person falls from grace somehow, and sometimes it happens, you hear about some big people and then some scandals emerge and people are shocked. Oh, I used to adore this person so much, and now this person is like disgraced. And then, now why is this person who adored somebody affected by that? Because that person brought some meaning in my life. And now, after falling from grace, I'm deprived of that meaning. So it's the grieving is done not because that person has fallen some, it's because it's my loss. And to some extent, think about it this way. When those who are near and dear to us, when they pass away, even death, the grieving that people do, the question also always is like, who are they grieving for? And sometimes people speak about when there is a death, say, oh, that's a very untimely death. And no, which is a timely death? There is no such thing as time. So this untimely death is a ridiculous adjective to death. And so then the grieving that occurs, who are we grieving for? I mean, sometimes think about it this way. Someone is terminally ill and the body's extreme suffering is going on, and that person dies. Logically, there should be celebration because This person was experiencing so much pain, now is free from that pain. But everyone is grieving. Now, while that person was passed away, it's probably celebrating. I'm free from this. So who are we grieving for? Who are we mourning for? And in some way, it's not grossly selfish, but in a very subtle way, we're just grieving for our loss, that person brought some meaning in my life, filled a certain space in my heart. Now, with departure, there is a kind of a hole in my heart, and I'm the loser. So I'm really, we don't think of it this way, but really, our mourning and grieving is for our suffering, not so much for the person who has passed away. And so we have to see the role the self plays in everyday occurrences in many different forms in our life. And therefore, surrender to the divine literally means this of self, if we can find a way to eliminate this self totally. And then only God can come in when the ego will go out. And so this Atma Nivedanam is such an important part. So we have taken a brief look at these 9 ways in which devotion can manifest, and that's called Navatha Bhakti. So I'll stop here now. But if you have any ideas and thoughts and comments and anything, just feel free to share. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So when you were about dasyam, the attitude of the service and work, you made that nice contrast between karma yoga and karma yoga. And my question is this. When I look at my own life, I find I will be invited to do something, maybe give a talk, write something, teach a course. And when I receive that invitation, I'm very excited. This seems like something I'm going to enjoy. I'm going to be using whatever gifts I have to do something, to give something back. At a certain point in the process, that joy diminishes and it becomes a burden. It's like, oh, I have to do that. That's one more thing I have to do. I want to understand and undo that process. And so I guess maybe that's my question. How do we keep our work joyful?
Well, I mean, one way clearly is to accept only what we have the time and energy for. I mean, usually, I mean, if anything we take upon too much upon ourselves, then it will be a burden. And so, but I can realize it's not easy to say no, because we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, so we'll have to learn a little way of saying a no and making the other person like it. Be a diplomat. They said a diplomat can tell you to go to hell in a way that you would really enjoy going there. Yeah, I mean, that would be good. I think to just see how much we can do, and the other way would be, I mean, it's tricky. I mean, because when any things come to us, I mean, how would we know? I mean, the bhakta can say, "Oh, God wants me to do it," or maybe God wants me to say no. I mean, how do you know? So that doesn't help. So it's better to be just kind of realistic about it and say, well, this is the time I have. These are the existing commitments I have. And if I want to do justice to what I'm already committed to doing it well, then I cannot take too much, and I cannot have too much on my plate. Because again, everything is for God, but if I take too much, then I won't be able to do anything as well and then make a good offering to the divine. That would be, yeah. Yeah. Kunal, you wanted to say something?
Just a very question, Maharaj. Could you repeat for me the book from which you read this other context, the line, and also.
Which
um,
which book?
Bhagavad.
Oh, the Bhagavad, the Sanskrit you mean?
That's and whatever you say. And the chapter,
Oh, the Bhagavata Shloka.
one can look at it.
Oh, yeah. So I'll tell you the number. It is Bhagavata. If you want to note it down, it's 7-5, the verses 23-24. Book 7, section 5, verses 23-24.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just taking that same language from even we are both in the service profession, teachers, and now this is the covered that. So the question then is there something that can be called excessive service? I mean, I don't want to use the word excessive, but I know that sometimes I stretch myself so much that I feel that, that there's like too much demands right now. And those demands you come to anticipate in fact. So you sort of go on that and you enjoy what you're doing, enjoy the classroom, enjoy the content. But then there's also the other responsibilities that you and at that point one feels that then you start feeling that as a chore. So I was wondering if is there a way in which one can sort of I don't want to say no to service itself. Important thing to me, but I feel that it often comes with these conditioning and stress. Which is possible sometimes.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering, what can be a good way to understand that you don't want to seem as if you're failing, but you also don't want to be tired and stressed. So these are these feelings that mix up with the
Yeah. I mean, I think any work that we do which involves other people, even in an administrative setup, there are going to be a little bit of tensions involved because we might love the work, we may enjoy the work, but we don't have control over other people's attitudes and this thing. And so we just have to then depend on the divine, depend on God and say, I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to continue to do what is right, what is good. And as much as I can, not hurt anyone in the process. But take it for granted that even you don't want to hurt somebody, some people are going to get hurt. Even if you don't want, that's just the way it is. And if some people are determined to get hurt, even if you have not done anything to hurt them, that's on them. What can be done? I mean, yeah, that's about life. Yeah.
What are some practical ways one can practice and letting go of these? Because the world we exist in is very egocentric. Like there's nothing in your daily life that's going to promote that sort of and we also don't have like we don't regularly come across people who are that selfless or like have let go of their ego. So every incident that happens with us in our daily lives is immediately going to trigger an ego-based response from us. So what does it actually look like letting go of ego and how do we practice that?
That is why we have the lives of Ramakrishna and all the other great saints and others, because It's true. We are influenced by the environment in which we live. And if we are just all the time going to be surrounded by egoistic people, then if we are not careful, just by the process of osmosis, we might kind of think, oh, this is how people have to live. If I can't do the way they are doing, then they'll push me down and I have to kind of assert myself. And so therefore, we have to then take inspiration from people in our lives who we may know, even from history or mythology, who showed that it's possible to let this little I get out of the way. So then the larger and a stronger and a more powerful I of the divine will work through us. So that is one thing, just dependent on God. The second thing is, sometimes we think people who are very egoistic, they are like very strong, they were aggressive and so on. But actually, egoistic people are among the very weak people in life. And, the more someone finds the need to be like a macho, aggressive, strong people, inside they're extremely weak. And they're trying to hide that inner weakness by the show of bravado outside. But someone who is really strong inside doesn't have to make that show. It's possible to be calm, to be peaceful, and yet be extremely strong. So, not having an ego is not a sense of weakness. In fact, that's possible to do only with tremendous amount of inner strength. And so, let people around you be as crazy as they want, but we don't have to be crazy just because they are crazy. It's tough. You get just that whole collective vibration, if you like. That collective vibe. Yeah, I was trying to find a word, some other word. The collective, yeah. I mean, just being. And it's like if you are in a room which is just air conditioned room, everything is cool, and then you can't be warm unless you kind of cover yourself with something. So it's a little bit like that. The only thing, if you're kind of surrounded by all these crazy egoistic people with very worldly materialistic values, we need to cover ourselves so that we are not affected by those values. And what a bhakta covers themselves is with this love for God, that I'm not going to compromise with the principles and values which are inviolable. And I think that's the important thing, is that a bhakta has to, or every one of us has to really ask ourselves, what are my core values in life? Do I have any core values in life? Because sometimes in the name of practicality, people feel as if everything is negotiable. Everything kind of, just depending on the environment, I can always keep on adjusting. And compromise is good. Life, it would be impossible without compromise. So there are things that we can and we should probably compromise with. But do I have anything in my life which I can say, I'm not going to compromise with it under any circumstances, that these are my core values, core principles. Even if someone would threaten me with life, I'm going to say, I'd rather die than compromise with this. So we have to ask, is there anything in my life I'm prepared to die for? Or just surviving is the core value that I'm willing to sacrifice everything for just physical survival? Or is there anything in my life I'm saying that is more important? And I think it's good to have something to live for. I mean, physical survival is fine, but how long can we survive? One day we are going to die anyway, one way or the other. But it's good to die for a great cause if we must die. In fact, there is a Mahabharata saying, Muhurtam jwalitam shreyo Natu dhuma itam chiram, which means that it is better to flame forth in an instant rather than just smoke away for ages. Sometimes you'll have this kind of a little bit of smoke coming. Some amount of kind of a latent fire is there. And it kind of that little bit of smoke can keep coming for days and weeks. And maybe there is a big, bright fire just comes and within 5 minutes it's gone. And so what that Mahabharata is saying, and the idea is better to live for a higher ideal, even if it's a short life, than just have a completely compromised life and live for, say, 120 years. Is it worth it? In fact, even Shankaracharya was born, we read in his life that his parents, before Shankara's birth, Shiva appeared in a dream and said, I have chosen to be born in your family. I'm going to take birth in your family. But here is a choice. What kind of a son do you want? A son who will be extraordinary, who will be a blessing to humanity, but will live for a very short time. Or a son who will have a long life, but be kind of an average person. I mean, this is an interesting dilemma. What would, as parents of someone, if you got a dream like that, who would you choose? Because a short-lived member of the family is going to be with you for a very short time, but really would be wonderful. Or would be someone, an average person would be there for years and years and years. Now, Shankara's parents chose, they said, we want that person who, we don't mind if the person is short-lived. We want someone who is a blessing to humanity. That's why Shankara came, he didn't live. He lived only for 32 years and much less than Swamiji. Swamiji lived for 39 years. And so, yeah, so we just have to see what is the core value, core principle of my life. Yeah.
Saying something that for minds Jesus Christ. Life.
Yeah.
Question is that this time, any questions, but voice. And then, is to ask, that problem, ask that question. If you have this for years to hear, how do you know that there is the answer? What is the answer? You put yourself.
To asking God, you mean? Well, if God speaks to you, that would make it easy. And God will. But, but what sometimes devotees try to see is like some sign from the divine. And just pray. And what I normally think is a good thing to do is you pray and seek divine guidance. And then use your best judgment. You have certain experience in life, you have certain ideas, weigh all the pros and cons, and take finally a decision with a prayerful heart. And just go. And before that, if God comes and tells you in some way, that's fine. Otherwise, you just say, well, this intellect you gave me, I'm trying to use it as best I can. Swami Vivekananda once said, many of us get many messages in life, some kind of a divine, supernatural sources. And he says, so long as that message concerns only you, do whatever you want. But if that message concerns somebody else, then think 100 times before acting on it. Because it's like, not, I don't know, we are much, we already past time. Oh, so, okay, yeah. Yes, go ahead.
Shanta, Dasha,
sometimes Shakta, a big Vatsalya, and then Manu.
Mhm.
Parents, and it's one direction and from parent to from mom or both mom and dad or both parents with their children. And Madhur is the one that Radha or Meera or Vashi.
Hmm.
These five phases are five ways of devotion and what you mentioned. Is it in the blended or it's a subset?
No, they're just kind of 5 examples of the way we can relate to God, but we cannot limit it to those 5. And in fact, and they are not even watertight. I mean, some ways, I mean, parents would have discovered it. You know, a mother, for instance. In fact, I read an article years ago which said a mother somehow kind of fulfills all of these. A mother can be at times friend, a mother can be, of course, a mother can be a very close, and mother can be sometimes like a master, like a servant. So sometimes in ways, it's possible for God to become all of these at, at different points in life. Yeah.
One should the going to become the added a sixth, which is loving God as your own self.
Yeah.
Need not to be good.
Yeah. Well, and then Sri Ramakrishna, he kind of turns that Vatsalya Bhava kind of on its head, because he just call it Santana Bhava, looking upon oneself as a child of God. So those 5 are not to be considered like some definitive 5 number. It's just 5 examples. Yeah. All right. So yeah.
Divya
Mm.
had a question.
Yeah.
How does Kirtan, why is it that music takes us closer to God? How does that happen?
Oh, why? But it does happen. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that probably is the power that music or even poetry has, because sometimes there are a lot of these subtle emotions and ideas and feelings that we have, which are better expressed through poem, through poetry than prose. That's why Swami Vivekananda just gave maybe 1 or twice 2 talks on Ramakrishna. He didn't speak much about directly on Ramakrishna. He refers to him now and then in his talks. But what he wanted to say about Sri Ramakrishna is kind of, you find it in its full force in that what we sing in the evening now as the Vesper hymns, the Khandana Bhavabandhana, and then the second hymn. And what Swamiji has said there about Ramakrishna, you find it that would be impossible to express in a talk that he gave. So music, and then music, even without any words, is a very universal language in some ways. Sometimes you hear some of these musical pieces from different parts of the country, different parts of the world, and there are no words there, but somehow it conveys an idea or a feeling. And so in that way, music is a more universal language. Think about it and see what you feel about it. Yeah.